Hello, you beautiful people. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about 5 players that I think you should not trade away if they're on your fantasy team. Before we begin, like and subscribe for more NBA fantasy content, and leave your comments down below about players that you think people shouldn't trade if they're on their teams. So yeah, with that being said, let's jump right into the video here. So the main reasons I don't think you should trade these players is either because they're just so good that I think it's immensely difficult to get equal value in return for them, or they're just playing really poorly on a cold streak, so it's hard to get equal value in return for them anyway. So yeah, the first player on our list is Luka Doncic. So Luka definitely fits into that category of players that are just so good I don't really see why you'd want to trade him. I mean, unless your team is like 0-4 and you really need team depth, then I just don't really see any reason for wanting to trade him. Like, the reason you're losing games is not because of Luka. So yeah, that's just the main thing. Like, people are putting trades for Luka Doncic in my comments, and I'm just wondering like why you'd want to get rid of the person who I consider to be the best fantasy player in the game by the end of this season. So yeah, again, this isn't set in stone. If you are losing games and you really need team depth, then you can go ahead and trade Luka if you're getting like a really good return. Like, I'm talking about you need to get like 3 top 50 players like easily. So, and one of them has to be top 20, even like to make it more extreme. But yeah, Luka Doncic is the first player that I just wouldn't trade just because he's so talented and such a good player for fantasy that I just don't really see why you'd want to. Next up is a player that I think is getting criminally undervalued, and that's De'Aaron Fox. Now, the only reason I wouldn't trade Fox is that he's just been playing at such a low level compared to what I expected from him this season that I think any trade you make with him is going to be for lesser value than you could get later when he starts to really come back into his own and be the player that everyone was expecting him to be this season. So yeah, this is kind of dependent on if De'Aaron Fox starts playing a bit better, but I'm just very confident that he is going to pick up his production, and that's why I wouldn't trade him because like I said, you're just going to be losing out in the long run on this deal. So yeah, De'Aaron Fox I wouldn't trade just because of the potential that he has, and that I really believe that he's going to bounce back before this season's done. Next up, we have the slim, thick legend himself, Nikola Jokic. So similar to Luka Doncic, I think he's going to finish the season as a top 3 fantasy player, and that's why I wouldn't really trade him unless, like I said, you're really desperate for wins, you really need team depth, or someone's dumb enough to give you like 2 top 10 players in return for him. But yeah, just like by the end of the season, I think he's going to finish as like a top 3 fantasy player. So it's like, just like, why would you want to get rid of someone that's producing on that level, you know? So Nikola Jokic, same reason for Doncic that I wouldn't trade him, is just because he's such a good player, and it would just be a real shame to trade him off your team for, even if you get good value, I just don't think it's worth the risk. Like, I'd rather just have Jokic on my team so I can get that like, guaranteed points each night. Then there's Sabonis, who has been getting mentioned a lot in the comments, and he's just such a solid, reliable fantasy player. Like, I just think he's such a great player for fantasy due to his rebounding ability, that if he's on your team, I just don't really think you should trade him. Like, unless someone is making, like, a really bad deal for them and you're just completely ripping them off. Like, that's the case with all these trades. If someone's giving you, like, such an OP deal that you don't really have a choice, then by all means take it. But I'm just saying, like, as a general rule of thumb, I just don't really think it's worth trading Domantas Sabonis for the consistent, reliable performance you're going to get from him. He's always going to be their number 1 option. He's a low injury risk, and he's always going to rebound the ball. So yeah, I wouldn't really look for trading him if he's on your team. Lastly, I'll keep it short because I've talked about this player in another video, but it's the sloppy toppy bubble legend himself, Jamal Murray. Now, I thought Jamal was going to have a breakout season like I mentioned, and so far he still has been underperforming, so that's why I think you shouldn't trade him, because no matter what you trade him for, I feel like it's just so hard to get adequate return for him for what I think you could get later in the season when he starts picking his performances back up and gets back to that form we were seeing in the bubble. So yeah, that's why I wouldn't trade Jamal Murray, just because, like I said, it's going to be so hard to get a good return for him just because his value is so low right now. And with that being said, that'll end off the video. Leave your players in the comments below that you think people shouldn't trade away. Always love reading your comments and helping you guys out, and I want to thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.